The chilling true story of a brutal family murder in a small Kansas town and the two drifters who committed it. With haunting detail and literary precision, Truman Capote delves into the minds of the killers, the grief of the community, and the fragile boundary between good and evil. The book, In Cold Blood, and you're listening to Lit Society. Let's get lit! Hey y'all, hey, this is Carrie.
And this is Alexis.
And you're listening to Lit Society, a show about books and drama. Our subject is very heavy today. All the trigger warnings we're going to talk about. That. Does that trigger you? It's in here. Just like last week. This is a happy show usually.
Oh. Yikes.
Right?
Yeah.
We joke around. We have fun. But it's been gray here in Chicago. And, sometimes that's reflected in our book choices.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like it was appropriate to be too happy in the introduction. Let's get lit because this, ooh-wee. But you know what? Let's get into it. Usually, listeners, as you know, we start our show each and every week. Y'all, we read a new book each and every week. We got a lot going on. Okay. Alexis is still traversing all over the world. Oh, there was a new word I learned in today's book for transient. It'll come to me later. I'll bring it up.
Okay.
But this is about Perry and his dad. Growing up, they used the word.
Yeah.
I
think I remember it.
Anyway, I am the owner, the founder, and the maker of Luxury Candles. I've had 2 markets in Chicago, and I just want to thank everyone who found our show through those markets. We love you guys. Thank you so much.
Welcome to the family.
So, welcome to all of our new listeners. This week's episode is a public episode. That means we're not gatekeeping for our Patreon team Literati, although we like to. This is one of those rare episodes that everyone can listen to for free everywhere you get podcasts. And so if you're new to our show, just know that usually each week we begin with a theme, a brief discussion about a theme inspired by the book. But this week we're going to do something different and start with Society Says. Society Says is where we share your comments, Team Literati and friends, regarding us, our show, comments that you left on Spotify, Instagram, YouTube, and we share them with the rest of the Lit Society. Alexis, is there a comment you thought this week particularly lit?
Yeah. I saw a comment from Apple Podcasts, and it says, it's from, Asset. And it says, love these ladies. I love listening to them and hearing their thoughts on their books. They choose amazing books and have great discussions about them. Thank you, Esther. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And Kari, share your comment, okay? Get into it.
Well, my comment is brought to us by YouTube. And it's actually from a real life friend, one of my Canadian friends. And they left a comment on The Nightingale. And the title of the video is The Nightingale is a Masterclass in Historical Fiction. Her comment, you guys are pros. Love the energy every single time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Appreciate that. And if anyone listening would like to leave a comment that we might share on the show, feel free to message us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you listen to our show, or also on Instagram. We don't even kind of protect Facebook or protect. We don't kind of check Facebook anymore. We don't even pretend to, is what I was going to say. That was Alexis's responsibility. She was supposed to check Facebook. Sometimes. But y'all, we ain't never been, we ain't the hugest Facebook fans. You sure you do. Yeah. And then we read Careless People, and I was really off of Facebook, so I don't know. Well, without further ado, let's get into the context surrounding this book. Let's hear a little bit about Truman Capote. This is his first work we've ever read. Yeah. Let's take a quick break and then dive into In Cold Blood. How does that sound?
Great.
All right. And we're back. Alexis, what can you tell us about Truman Capote, who, although I've never seen Capote, will always be, what's that actor? You know who I'm talking-
Hoffman.
It's always Seymour Hoffman. I know what Truman Capote looked like. I've never seen Capote the movie, but to me, it is Philip Seymour Hoffman. But tell us who the real Truman Capote is, a little bit about him, and perhaps his inspiration for writing In Cold Blood, his one and only true crime book, nonfiction. I don't want to call it a thriller, a nonfiction.
Yeah. Okay. So Capote was born in Louisiana, but grew up in Monroeville, Alabama, where he was friends with Harper Lee. You know who Harper Lee is?
Yes, To Kill a Mockingbird.
Right.
Another book I've never read.
Capote began writing short stories as a preteen. Somebody said 8 years old. Somebody says 11. So I say preteen. Between 1943 and 1946, he wrote a continual flow of short stories that were published in popular magazines like Harper's Bazaar, Mademoiselle, and The New Yorker. Capote is also the author of Breakfast at Tiffany's, a novella. Maybe you've seen the movie. I've seen the movie and read the book twice. He's known for a fabulous black and white masquerade ball that occurred in November 1966. That black and white ball has its own Wikipedia page. Capote was a bit messy too. He wrote a thinly veiled fictionalized account about his high society friends and their lives. And they even made a what is it? A Netflix miniseries about it.
Mm-hmm.
In Cold Blood was published in 1966. Capote started working on this true crime event before the murderers were even caught. And he spent 6 years interviewing and researching the story. In Cold Blood was adapted into a movie in 1967, and then 2 other movies based on Capote's fascination with the murders. And I think one of them was in 2005, and that was the Philip C. Hoffman movie that Kari referenced. Let's talk a little bit about his inspiration, maybe in context. He wanted to make an experiment in journalistic writing, and he was looking for a subject when he came across the New York Times article, Kansas Farmer Slain. Family of 4 is slain in Kansas. So that piqued his interest. He said, a little item just about like that. And the community was completely nonplussed. And it was this total mystery of how it could have been and what happened. And I don't know what it was. I think it was that I knew nothing about Kansas or that part of the country or anything. And I thought, well, that will be a fresh perspective for me. And I said, well, I'm just going to go out there, just look around and see what this is. And so maybe this is the subject I've been looking for. Maybe a crime of this kind is in a small town. It has no publicity around it, and yet had some strange ordinariness about it. So I went out there and I arrived just 2 days after the Clutter's funeral. This book is considered a nonfiction novel, and in that it depicts nonfiction events woven together with fictitious conversations. And a slang word for this nonfiction category or nonfiction novel is faction.
Yeah, because he's going to paint colors around the perpetrators' conversations they may have had. And he won't present it as they may have said this. He's telling it like it's a story, like they were driving down the road. So-and-so saw a dog. They had this conversation, then he veered to hit the dog, and that made him feel he wasn't there, but he is using the facts that he's learned from the perpetrator, specifically one, and formed a whole story around them. So that's important to know, because you never want to confuse what the author is pouring into the surrounding story for the facts that actually occurred around this story. And there are some questions about the legitimacy of the case and other things that Truman Capote.
Capote.
Capote doesn't go into. But once we understand, like Alexis said, that this is fiction with a lot of fact in it, then it's easier to swallow.
Kari, who do you think would enjoy reading this book?
Right. So we have read books like this where fact and fiction are mixed together, heavy on the fact. I think of David Grant, who's very much fact-based, but some things he will disclose it may have went like this. He's letting you know as the reader that this is a fact-based book. It is not just a story I'm creating. I am taking all these facts and presenting them to you as a story. Also, Isabel Wilkerson is very good with that, where she will spend years getting the facts straight to present them in a narrative way. Truman takes a lot of liberties, yet within the confines of what actually happened. If true crime is your bag, then you would be interested in this. If you're okay having your facts presented in a literary way, which most people are, I mean, that's more entertaining. It's easier to read. Then this may be for you. Caveat, unlike David Grant, unlike Isabel Wilkerson, this involves brutal murder and pain. I am tearing up right now. So it's a heavy book. It's heavy. It's heavy in that there's no upside to anything. And you should know that. If you're okay with that, brilliantly, written in Truman Capote's way. I'm saying a lot. If you're okay with that, then maybe this is the book for you. And Alexis, why did you choose this book?
So I thought I had read this book years ago. And, I'm in a state of no memory of many things. And it's just getting worse as days go by. I blame perimenopause. That's it. I'm going to throw that out there.
Everything is perimenopause with Alexis.
It is.
Alexis is 26 years old. Swears she got perimenopause. We was hanging out the other day. She dropped her keys. Oops, perimenopause. Everything's perimenopause. It's the only problem in the universe.
It is my only problem in the universe at this very moment.
Thanks, Halle
That's
Berry.
all I can do. Any event, I don't remember. But by the time I finished reading this book, I'm like, I don't think I read this. I don't think I read it. I think I just watched the movie. Now, you done messed up the word for me. Truman Capote's. The movie Capote. And I think I also watched the 1967 movie as well. So anyway, I wanted to revisit it in my adult life and see what I thought about it. So reading it is always the first step for me. So that's that.
Well, without further ado, let's get into In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. This will be full of spoilers. Alexis, you have the floor.
Okay, let's dig in. Part 1. It's Saturday, November 14th. Let's meet the Clutter family. The story begins sharing details of the family, the small kind of rundown town, diverse. It's a farm town. They live in Holcomb, Kansas. It's November of, as I mentioned, it's 1959. There's a village of about 270 people. There's a father, Herbert William Cutler. I don't know the word. 48 years old. He's in good health. He's about 5'10". He weighed 154 pounds. And that's all based on a recent life insurance exam he'd taken, and because he's taken out a policy. He was the owner of River Valley Farm. He ran a robust farm. He's not the richest man in town, but he is the most widely known. He travels a lot because he's involved in a lot of activities, government work, local organizations. He supports the community and the community loves him. He didn't smoke, he didn't drink, and he didn't hire any people that did those things.
I mean, if he heard that you had one beer once, he would make sure you were fired, penniless, and your family would starve.
Yeah, he did not care.
he did not play about vices.
Yeah. Mr. Cutler was otherwise a good employer. Like I said, his farm was prosperous. There were no neighbors within a half a mile other than the sole resident employee who lived in a house about 100 yards from the Clutter home. They lived a mile and a half. The family home was a mile and a half from the highway. And their place, it wasn't like a place you just came upon by chance. You needed to know where it was. And he also had this dog, this family dog that was gun shy. And
Have you ever heard of
everybody knew
that?
it.
So the dog was brave unless he saw a gun, and then he would
Mhm.
cower. Like if you just even had a gun on your belt, the dog would see it and whimper and walk away with its tail between its legs. Does that happen?
I'd never heard of it, but it doesn't surprise me.
Okay. No one understands why the dog was a rescue dog. They don't know what kind of life it led before the family got it.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And Mr. Clutter was married for 25 years to his wife, Bonnie Fox. She's 3 years younger than him, and they produced 4 children, 3 daughters and a son. A little bit about Bonnie. She was off and on a psychiatric patient for at least 6 years, and she just returned home after 2 weeks in a treatment center in Wichita. She had new information to share with her husband, and that was that the source of her misery was not in her head, but her spine, and an operation would fix that. She was excited. She looked forward to being her own self again. She was about 98 pounds, they said, and the husband and wife didn't even sleep in the same room or on the same floor. And it's not because I don't know, they didn't really go into that. They just said they slept on the different floors.
Yeah, there was probably a sexual side of their marriage that no longer existed, but he seemed to care. Yeah, they cared a lot about each other. And she has psychiatric episodes, which maybe hindered him being able to sleep through the night.
Mm-hmm.
And so they eventually drifted apart in that area of their relationship.
Yeah. Their eldest daughter was Eviana. She moved out and was married. She had a 10-month-old daughter, and she was living in Northern Illinois. They were expected in town because Thanksgiving was 2 weeks away, and the whole family would have been converging on town. The next daughter was Beverly. She was in school. She was studying to be a nurse in Kansas City, Kansas, and she was engaged. And they were planning to send out invitations for the wedding at kind of mid-Christmas, mid-December.
And you said this is November when we meet them.
Yeah, we're meeting them in November.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then there was still at home with 16-year-old Nancy, who everybody in town loved. She was going steady with a local boy, but her father wanted them to call that off. He wanted her to call that off. Not about that, it was just that they're too young. They were of different religious paths, and there was just no hope. Let's not do it. So end it now, because it's better you end it now than later.
Yeah, they come from sorry about that beeping outside. They come from a big Methodist family, and her boyfriend's Catholic. So where is this really going?
Yeah, where is this really going?
She's such a good girl too.
Yeah, she's a good girl. Mm-hmm. She's very organized. She's very much like her father, they say. And she's very organized. She has a lot of things to do, and she's got her hands in many pots. And she's always
she makes
helping
time
out
for others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And then there was the young 15-year-old boy, Kenyon. He was a little like his mother, more reserved. I don't remember too much about him. Do you remember anything specific? Yeah, they didn't say a lot about him. He was reserved, very much like his mom.
You said he was 15?
Yeah, 15 years old.
I remember him as like 8.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm wrong on that.
Mm-hmm. And he had this radio. There's a radio he had.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about the score. Now, we meet Perry and Dick. Perry and Dick met as cellmates in the Kansas State Penitentiary. The men had plans to meet up at a restaurant, but Dick was late. So Perry, let's talk about Perry. Perry is short, buff, about 31. He's addicted to painkillers because of an accident that he had when he was younger that stunted his growth. Perry, he's pretty smart. He He's the person that will correct your English. He's brilliant.
He puts on a performance of being more intelligent than maybe he is.
Oh, is that the impression? Well, sure.
That's what they say.
But they also refer to him as brilliant in the book.
Okay.
So I'll go with that.
And he's the one everyone befriends, including Truman, in real life.
Yeah. And he was never able to go to college. He had a very dysfunctional life growing up. He was also a merchant marine and he was in the army. He keeps a guitar and he carries with him wherever he goes, like a big box of mementos, memorabilia. Dick, on the other hand, he's like 30 minutes late to their scheduled meetup point. And he's in this black sedan. In the black sedan, he has a 12-gauge pump action shotgun, a flashlight. He's got a fishing knife, a pair of leather gloves, and a hunting vest packed with shells. Now, Dick worked as an auto mechanic in a repair garage. He lived with his parents, and that was a condition for his release from prison. Dick told his father and his employer that he was taking Perry to visit his sister in Fort Scott, who was holding $1,500 for him. So
yeah, they're not even supposed to be together according to his parole. Criminals cannot be mingling. He also was like, I'm going to take care of all my kids because I love my first wife and the second, even though I don't want to see them again. And so I'm good.
Yeah. So
you can trust me.
Dick is like 28 years old. He's got 3 children and 2 ex-wives. And he's got this foolproof plan that was the perfect score. So after spending some time making repairs to the car, they head towards Holcomb or Fort Scott. On their way, they make a few stops. They're picking up rubber gloves. They're picking up rope. They're picking up hosiery for masks, which Dick eventually tells Perry, we don't need them because there won't be any witnesses. So it just doesn't matter. We don't need that.
And he has a bad eye, so he feels like even with his stocking, he'd be recognized. Dick does.
Yeah. We learn a bit that while in prison, Dick saw in Perry that he was a natural killer and he could exploit that. And he learned that after Perry shared a story of how he killed a black man, which we would later find was a lie. Dick saw Perry as a person who could be manipulated into friendship. And Perry, on the other hand, is somebody who was starved for a friendship.
So Dick's right on that account. So Perry can be manipulated for companionship.
So Perry just did what he could. He saw Dick as this masculine type, and he just wanted to be his friend. So he was definitely right on that front. Any other details you want to share about these two?
About their upbringing?
About their upbringing, whatever.
Can I talk a little about Perry's upbringing?
Yeah, you can.
So later on in the story, it will be debated whether they were insane due to the traumatic events of their childhood. In Perry's case, and again, Perry is the one that people gravitate more to after the events that are being talked about in this book. In Perry's case, his father was white, his mother was Native American, his father abused his mother and the children. His mother ran away. She was an alcoholic, choked on her own vomit, and that is how she died. The children were dispersed. Perry, all his life, through adulthood, even when he's in prison later, has a problem wetting the bed. He has a problem with incontinence. So as a child being raised by nuns, they would beat him viciously for it. One even tried to drown him. She was later fired. But these events really put in him a distrust and dislike of people. His father eventually took him back. Out of all the children, he felt closest to Perry, but his father wasn't great. They lived a transient life where they lived in a trailer and lived here, ate scraps of food. So no solid, ground. Perry loved his father, but he had to get away from him, so he joined the army. He was terribly vicious to Japanese people, but that brought him back to the U.S. with like honor. He was honorably discharged. A flight was paid for him to be sent to Alaska. He got a motorcycle, nearly died, spent 6 months in the hospital. All I'm telling you is this life ain't been no crystal stair. Okay?
Yeah.
This is rough. So when we find him and when he finds Dick or Richard, he is very much, like Alexis said, raw and starved for some type of affection and acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
Richard, on the other hand, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention. Back to Perry real quick. I'm gonna get through this. So, mom and I think 4 kids, right? So,
Yeah.
mom died choked on vomit. Sister died because she killed herself, and then her husband, who pushed her to the point of suicide, found her, sat with her, and then later killed himself. One sister fell out of a high-story window.
Wait. Go back to that sister. So a sister that fell out the window. Oh, a brother.
Was it the brother that was his?
It was the brother that was his. The woman committed that.
Right. So sorry for saying the Sue word. But so it was his brother's wife that unalived herself. And then the brother found her, sat with her, and then unalived himself. Okay. Putting that to bed. One of his sisters fell out of a window, but it is suspected by him mostly that she jumped. And the last remaining sister he has don't want to have nothing to do with him.
In fact, she's afraid of him.
She is terrified of him and wants to just kind of bury the past, everything that went on with her family. No happy memories there. And then there's him. So he's truly alone in the world. Toward the end of the book, Richard is like, I don't know anyone more alone than Perry. Because Richard's family, he comes from a mother and father. They weren't wealthy. They were on the verge of poorness, but it doesn't seem abusive, right?
No, I didn't get that impression. His parents truly cared for him, took care of him, nurtured him through school. He was a great athlete. Just very positive things about him.
About his life. But he does seem to be touched, as an auntie might say. But being touched and being poor don't make you violent.
No.
But these things are brought up as reasons for why Richard might be the way he is. And that's it. Why his eye like that?
Well, I don't think they said. But then he also has this, what is the word? He's interested in young girls.
He is a pedophile. He recognizes about himself. He tries to overcompensate by calling himself a real normal. In his head, he's like, this is what most men want to do. So his 2 wives were very young. The second was like 14, and she wasn't the last. He has also assaulted children. He knows this about himself. He is slightly ashamed of it, but figures this is normal. I am like everyone is. And although it's nothing to be proud of, it's not unnormal to like children in this way.
Yeah, he's talked himself into that. Okay, thanks for sharing those. All right, so then the story...
Depression. This book, depression. Okay, go ahead.
Kind of shifts. And we have it.
Let me just cry into my coffee. Go ahead. I'm sorry to bother you, ma'am. Let me mute my mic while I tear up.
There is an interview. Okay. There is an interview. And that is from Bobby Rupp, who was the boyfriend of Nancy. He's being interviewed prior to a lie detector test. And Bobby explains his visit the previous night with the Clutters. He wanted to go out with Nancy, but Mr. Clutter said no because they'd stayed out so late the previous night. So Bobby came over to watch TV with the family. And as he spent time with Nancy, her father got a phone call, and it's with his business partner, Mr. Vliet. And Nancy is talking to Bobby, and she tells him that her father has been kind of in a mood for weeks, but she didn't really understand why. Nancy walks Bobby out to the car. He drives away, and he thinks back to this time as he's leaving, because it's about 10:30, and he's like, maybe somebody was hiding among the trees. He just got this feeling, and maybe they were just waiting for him to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Sunday, November 15th. On Sunday morning, the farmhands, two brothers, they arrived to do their Sunday morning chores. By 9 a.m., they finished. They noticed nothing seemed different. When they left, they waved to Nancy Ewalt, a friend of Nancy Clutter. Nancy Clutter and her father, Nancy Clutter. Nancy Ewalt, her father, was driving her onto the property. So as they were walking away, they waved at Nancy Ewalt and her father as they were driving onto the property. Now, Nancy was supposed to be dropped off by the Clutter home because she usually rode with them to church. Now, her father didn't go to church. He just dropped her off so she can go to church with them. However, when Nancy went to the door, there was no answer. She went around at the back of the house. Both of the cars were there, which meant, of course, that the family was home, but there was no answer, which seemed impossible. Yeah, because her friend's name was Nancy, the one that went to church with her.
They both were named Nancy?
Yeah, they both were named Nancy.
I missed that. I'm like, why are you saying this about Nancy?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's another friend. So there's no answer. And it just seemed impossible that this family would just be sleeping in and miss church.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not their norm. They're church-going people. They're going to be there. So they drive down to the neighbor's house who...
But you said her father would drop her off at church. Oh, Nancy Clutter's father would drop her off at church. So her friend came by because she didn't see Nancy at church. Is that what happened?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No, I'm sorry.
So, like, they know there's no reason for this family to miss church. So they drive down to a neighbor's who they think would know. If anybody knows something, this neighbor down the street. So they go down the street. They let and she too thinks it's odd. So she calls the house. She lets the phone ring. And they decide to drive back over to the Clutter home.
What would you have done in this case?
I would go to my friend's home and check on their well-being.
I wouldn't have left the first time. I see y'all cars out here. Ain't nobody gonna open the door and I can get in the house?
Yeah.
Because what's the worst gonna happen? Somebody naked? Ain't nobody gonna be naked if everybody in there. So I'm walking in. I've walked in your mama house before. Unprovoked.
And it was quiet. It was quiet. So, but I didn't realize at that moment that they could easily get in the house. So only when the second person came back did I realize that they could get in the house. So that's why they went down to the other person. That's what I was thinking. Anyway, So they leave. They come back to the house. Now, Nancy Ewalt's father is in the car. He was like, I don't really know these people, so I'm not going to walk in their house. So
wait, Nancy Ewalt's father is in the car? I thought he left the family.
No. Let me share that one more time. Nancy
Not
Ewalt.
one more time. She let me know she ain't going to do it again. Yeah, go ahead.
Nancy Ewalt and her father, he's driving her to Nancy Clutter's home to check on the family, right? Because after church, they weren't there. It's odd they weren't there. And as they're coming up, the two boys are leaving, right? So they're like, I don't know why they're not here.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
But I really thought her father had abandoned the family and it was just her and her mother.
Ewalt?
Yeah, it must be another friend.
I think that's Susan. I think that's her friend. Yeah, that's Susan.
Thank you. Okay,
yeah,
I forgot about this, Nancy. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So Ewalt, the father, is sitting in the car. He's like, I don't really know those people, so I'm not going to go. Y'all go. So they go to the house, up the stairs to Nancy's room.
I'm just prologuing this because I don't want to hear it. So anyway, How you doing?
No,
You got plans today?
don't worry. I'm not gonna go into a lot of detail. What I am gonna say is that they go up to the room. The neighbor girl screams because she can see that Nancy Clutter is dead, and then she's like, "No, it's a terrible nosebleed, but there's too much blood. Oh my goodness, it's even on the walls." Mr. Ewald, who's sitting in the car, he at some moment between them discovering the body and come running out, he goes up because he's like, I shouldn't have let them go in by themselves. I should have went in with them. Too late. The girls come screaming out. Mr. Ewald then goes and he calls the ambulance. He tries to call the ambulance, but he learns that the phone line has been cut. So they go back to the neighbor's apartment building. Another neighbor who is a teacher at the school, he calls the police with Mr. Ewald, and they wait for the police and then go back to the house. Then at this point, they confirm that Nancy is dead. She's fully clothed in her bed. She had been shot in the head. And then they find the rest of the bodies. They find Mrs. Clutter. She's in her bed. They find Kenyon, who's in the basement. And then they find Mr. Clutter, who's in the furnace room. They also see a blood-stained footprint on a mattress box and a cord that looked like the killer may have used it to form some kind of torture of Mr. Clutter. That's what their initial view is. Maybe they tied his hands overhead to a steam pipe and then cut him down. That's that. Back in Olathe, Kansas, Perry is in a hotel room sleeping with this portable radio nearby. And Dick was home sleeping.
That's Kenyon's radio he stole, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. After the murders, the women in the community are very afraid, and at least 2 families move from the area. Part 2, the investigation. Now, why didn't a neighbor who lived less than 100 yards hear the gunshots, Kari?
Because his wife was up all night with the baby. And it's country yards, y'all. If you know anything about living in the South, the silence is deafening. And what I mean by that is you can't hear nothing your neighbor do.
Yeah.
It's like the vast emptiness absorbs all the sound. Also toads and stuff. So it's like nature out there. You know,
then,
so yeah, this was loud, but they were busy in their own house minding their business.
And then there's a Milo barn between the houses, they said. So that is creating noise as well.
Yeah.
So, of course, the initial investigation is from the police, but then we're introduced to the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, or the KBI. They take over whenever a case is beyond the competence of the local authorities. Al Dewey led the KBI team. He knew and liked the family and made it his personal proposition to find out what, the why, the who, even if it was going to take him the rest of his life. So what we learned from initial investigation is that Mr. Clutter had taken out a $40,000 life policy on his life 8 hours before his death. I mean, like, the check was still in the insurance agent's pocket that he paid for it. We learned that neither of the women were sexually assaulted. We will learn later that the young girl was not sexually assaulted because Perry stopped Dick from his efforts to do that, because he did try.
Can I just say?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
So you may be getting to this, but there is a point. So the town and everyone knows that Herb doesn't keep money in the house. He don't really deal with money. So it becomes clear that this home will probably not have a lot of money in it. In Richard's mind, he will always say that he is here to rob them. But his main motivation is that he heard about Nancy and he wants to assault her.
Mhm.
That is his main motivation, his primary goal for going into the house and eventually being an accessory to the death of all those people.
Yeah.
Perry, on the other hand, is really trying to befriend Dick, follow his guidance as this masculine persona, and be a man himself. And so, through Dick's perversion when it comes to children, Perry is losing respect for him, but not enough to not be coerced by the idea of even upping him in masculinity. So Dick has this issue with children. Perry looks down on it. And honestly, a lot of things about Dick, Perry looks down on, but that has become in his mind. Now I'm the man of this twosome and I'm going to show that I'm a big man. So this toxicity is the catalyst for the actions that come later. But I just want to state that Richard knew this house may not have a lot of money. His main motivation was the girl, the child.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's right.
We're here all day, folks.
We also eventually learn about the missing radio. They're looking at, of course, Bobby because he was the last one there and he was due to take a lie detector test. There was, of course, the husband in the house that lived next door. There was a man that happened to just sometime after the murders happened, there was a man that just kind of happened to be in the house. And they looked at him because he also had a shotgun and a knife in his vehicle. And but the guy was only at the house out of curiosity for the murders that had happened. There were a few theories out there. An initial response when they went to the friend's house down the road was that maybe Bonnie had something to do with taking out the family. Because of her mental state. Like, well, she's not really better. She's always having these issues, so it could have been her. There was also the idea that there was a murder, unaliving of self by Mr. Clutter because he was broke. And so he took out that hefty life insurance policy. And so he shoots Bonnie and then he kills the kids and then himself with a bomb. That's far-fetched because there was no explosion anywhere. And then possibly the killers they took out the wrong family. There is another family, if you turn left instead of right, that family is the richest family in town. So maybe the killers just took a wrong turn. Were there any other theories, Kari, that I may have missed?
Bobby did it. The dad did it. This is a time when this close-knit community is just blaming each other because who else could it be? Who would come all the way here to do this great evil if it wasn't one of us? And so they will never heal from this. This lack of trust will stay with them even after the facts come out.
Mm-hmm. And then the thing is, it's not that they hadn't had murders before, but this particular family, murders in this community, but this particular family is like, how did you choose them? What?
And the murders before were AB equals C. Two men have a conflict, one ends up dead. It wasn't random and brutal and disgusting and involving children.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So let's go back to Dick and Perry they're now like on a shopping spree. They're writing checks, pawning items that they purchased. They're buying clothes, rings, cameras, TVs, everything they can put their hands on, and they're pawning them because this is their form of getting money. But seems as if Dick is in this depressed mood. He's thinking about his parents. He's thinking about the consequences of his actions. He's like, I've been writing all these bad checks. They're going to eventually go to my parents. they're going to come in the mail at my parents' house. My father's going to want to pay the bill, and this is not good.
To be clear, he shows more remorse for the checks than anything that has happened in the last couple days.
Mm-hmm. And Perry is like, man, you really came through. You made it happen. You should really be happy. And at this point, I'm wondering, like, how is he saying that when they did not get anything? They don't have any. It's not. I thought at first maybe they're writing checks that Mr. Clutter had, but no, these are blank checks that they're
visiting
writing.
old friends and stealing checks from them. It's like a mess. Did you talk about how much they got from the Clutter house?
No.
It's like,
please
are you
share.
going to talk about
nope,
that? It's
go.
like $30.
Yep.
So they killed
maybe $37 because somebody had $7 in their purse.
That's right. So they killed a family of 4 in their home, innocent people, in the most brutal way for $30.
Mm-hmm.
This is when I cried.
Yeah.
Just the lack of understanding the value of life. Nothing in that house could have equaled the life of even one individual. But to do all of this for $30 and then immediately start scamming checks.
That was so crazy to me. That was just so crazy to me. And this is before we found out that Dick's actual purpose for going into the home was really to assault the young girl.
Mm-hmm.
On November 21st, Dick and Perry leave Kansas. And by November 23rd, they crossed the line into Laredo, Texas, and were 200 miles from their next destination, Mexico City. They were going to rob this house, go to Mexico City and live it up, get jobs, do whatever, scam people, whatever they do, they were going to do it in Mexico City. While on the road to Mexico City, they sell a lot of the items. In fact, most of the items that they bought in Kansas. They even sold the Zenith portable radio to a Mexican City policeman that Dick had befriended. They stayed in Mexico for a while. They hung out. They're having a great old time. But Dick can't find a job worthy of him. They're not paying enough. So he makes the call that they are going to return to the U.S., sell the car, hitchhike. They'll go to Vegas and work out a scheme there. Let's see. What else? Anything about that time where they're traveling to Mexico and in Mexico that you think is important to share, Kari?
No, and I was very irritated that Truman even delves into the grandson, the grandfather, and the bottles. It's just, no, there's nothing about this that I want to talk about.
Okay. Oh,
These
yeah.
men didn't have a plan and everything is stupid.
Yeah. So they're heading back to the U.S., okay? They're hitchhiking, that kind of thing.
Because they really feel like they've gotten away with this.
Yeah. They really...
And they don't even think about it anymore.
Well, Perry has his reservations. He's like, it's just not possible for us to get away with this.
Oh, okay.
We will... It's just not possible. He doesn't see it. So in part 3 of the book, we're introduced to Floyd Wells. On November 17th, this is 2 days after the crime is discovered, he reads about the Clutter family murders and realizes not only did he know the Clutter family, but he knew who murdered them. He tells us Dick was his first cellmate when he went to prison, and Dick was due to be paroled in August of that year. So they spent a few months together. He figures that at one time, him and Dick were talking about jobs they worked, because he's trying to think about how the Clutter family came up. So he assumed they were talking about jobs that they had worked. And he mentioned working for Mr. Clutter. He mentioned, so Dick asked if Mr. Clutter was wealthy, and Floyd said yes. He talked about him a time. He told him about the family. He kept asking about the ages of the children. And he told him that Mr. Clutter at one point had handled $10,000 in 1 week. He asked him if there was a safe. He was like, yeah, I think there's like a safe in there. I don't know. I think so. He asked the layout of the house. And Floyd always answered him. He never said he always answered him. I'll say that. He always answered his questions that he had about this family, this house, all the details he gave him. And Dick memorized that. Floyd would later say he never believed that Dick would actually go through with anything. Dick mentioned that him and his friend Perry, who had not too long ago been released from prison, are going to go there and rob that family. They're going to take them and kill them, in fact. They're going to tie them up and kill them. And if there are any witnesses present, you're going to take them out. And Floyd is like, people in prison are always bragging about something they're going to do, they did. It's just, you never believe them. Can't be true. It's not true. So even though Dick was saying these things, Floyd never believed they would carry him out. Floyd wanted to tell somebody, but he didn't want the repercussions that come with telling on another prisoner. Kind of sat on this for a while. He's like, oh, but there's a reward. Maybe I can get a reward. He's like, maybe I won't get the reward again. So he's sitting on
Fast forward, he'll get it. It won't matter though. Because he's going to be in jail again.
He's going to be in jail again. But he sits on that information, I say, for a couple weeks. I feel like it was longer, but the time span in this story is really short. It's really short. So he confides in another prisoner, a Catholic inmate. And that inmate makes a way for Floyd to tell the deputy and then the warden. And as soon as the warden finds out, he makes the call. When Dewey gets the information, he was like, great, this is exactly what I needed. I have already started working on the angle of who had worked for the Clutters in the past. So this is great. You pushing me forward. So Dewey's team immediately goes out and starts interviewing the family of the suspects and trying to identify where these men may be. Once the suspects get back to the States, they're there for a few weeks, and it was Dick's idea that they should return to Kansas and get some money and then leave again for Vegas. So they go. Dick is in Kansas writing bad checks, and he's writing checks one place, and a guy is like, this guy is weird. And so he goes out and gets his license plate and reports it to the police. Dewey, the KBI investigator, he was hoping to nab them while they were in Kansas, but he doesn't. They end up leaving Kansas without being captured. About 2 weeks later, the men are in Las Vegas. Perry needs to go to his post office because he had a package shipped from Mexico to Las Vegas because he carries his memorabilia, his mementos everywhere he goes. And as they're leaving the post office, a police officer pulls them over and takes them in for questioning. Dewey and his KBI team arrive within a couple of days, and they start questioning them. Dick and Perry are under the impression they're only here for parole violations. That's the writing of bad checks. So when Dick is questioned, he's rattling off all the places he wrote these bad checks. His memory is brilliant. He's given all the details. Of course, the investigators kind of zero in on the 14th and the 15th of where they were, but still, Dick is not paying attention to that. They talk about Perry's sister. And then they tell Dick, listen, we know Perry doesn't have a sister living in Fort Scott, and never has. And on Saturdays, the post office is closed. So stay here. We'll come back to you. Dewey told Dick it's over, and he leaves the room. So he leaves him there. Meanwhile, they're also questioning Perry, and Perry's going wrong. His same story, same story, all in line. Everything is connecting. He doesn't give as much detail as Dick does, but he's sharing the same story. And then the investigator finally tells Perry, "We're going to tell you what you were really doing Saturday night, where you were, what you were doing. You were killing the Clutter family." And Perry denies it. Does a job of denying it. He's like, "I didn't do it. It's no problem. There's no problem." The next day, so they leave him with that, like, think about that. The next day, the police come back and, well, the investigators round back up and they're investigating them again. And they talk to Dick. And of course, they reveal to him why he's really there, because of the murders of this family. And Dick spills the beans. He says, Perry did it. He killed everybody. It was his work. And so that brings them together. Of course, they're arrested for the crimes of the family and for the murder of the family. They organize, of course, they're extradited one to Kansas after they've confessed, and they get their written confession. Now, Perry is like, did Dick really tell? Did he really tell? He was the one that was supposed to hold out. So again, he is just really losing respect for Dick and the person that he is, because he feels like he's truly a coward. Anyway, they're back in Kansas. They're going to be held accountable, put up in court, and not witnesses. They have the voir dire process where jurors are interviewed and whether or not they knew the Clutter family and all of that. How do you feel about the death penalty? Because Kansas has a death penalty. It's a death penalty state. The trial happens. All the details are revealed. They have there's even a psychological evaluation of the people, even though they're not going to hold the trial for that. There is a psychological evaluation, and decisions are made based on the family's upbringing. Kari talked about it a little earlier. But it doesn't prevent the trial from going forward. When the prosecution and the defense conclude, the jury deliberates for 40 minutes and gives Dick and Perry the death penalty, and they're scheduled to die October 25th, 1962. There are several appeals. They even end up going back into the courthouse. Because they feel like the Dick and Perry weren't properly represented.
Yeah, they weren't offered a lawyer before they were interrogated. All these are true.
Well, I think they were offered a lawyer.
Oh, were they?
The biggest problem was they weren't properly represented.
And the jury was biased. The lawyers didn't even offer them the
change of venue.
Changing the venue. The judge knew of the Clutters and stuff like that.
Yeah, the conflicts of interest were questioned, but those appeals all failed. And the two men were executed on April 14th of 1965. And that brings us to the end of our story, unless, Kari, you would like to share.
No.
All right, let's take a break and we'll come back.
Okay.
And we're back. So, Kari, please tell us your final thoughts on the book and whether or not you would recommend it.
I thought this book was well written. It really puts you into the setting in which these terrible events take place, and it does it delicately. It does rehash the plot.
A lot.
The occurrences, I should say, of that night over and over again, as well as talking about Perry's childhood over and over again. I did not like the repetition, especially over these grave details. All in all, this book was deeply, deeply troubling. It was hard for me to read, and I did not enjoy it. I would not recommend it. That said, there are some topics here that I find fascinating in that they fascinate, it seems, those that read the book and Truman Capote himself. Those topics include the idea that both good and evil can live in a person. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know why that's fascinating to people. I know sometimes the idea that someone committed a horrible crime must mean that that person and every aspect of them systematically is evil. But that's not how humanity works. That's not how people work. So we should all assume that the man that goes home at night to a wife and children and treats them great can also commit terrible acts outside of the home, and the family would never know. Mm-hmm. Because people can be duplicitous. Mm-hmm. They can compartmentalize their lives to death. Mm-hmm. So yes, that happens. However, this seems to be a very hard to swallow pill for those in Kansas, those surrounding the case, Truman Capote, and everyone who's heard about this case. And I understand that because I'm not there. So I imagine if I knew this family, if I was in that setting, the idea that these people could come from nowhere and inflict such havoc so as to change not just the lives of the Clutter family, those that survived, but also the lives of everyone who ever knew them and heard about them. That's how death works. The best friend and the old boyfriend, they'll never be the same after these events. It's terribly sad. When this book first was published, The Guardian, George Steiner did a review of the book, and he said this. I wanted to mention it. This was back in 1965, December 2nd. He said, he talks about how this book describes, well, the vastness of America, undeveloped and impoverished areas of it, and how you can go on for days and weeks and entire lifetimes and never really hit civilization.
Yeah.
Never hit an economic ladder. And he says this, and I quote, "If a man falls off the escalator of American economic and social achievements, there is a gray turbulence of petty crime, illiterate sex, and aimless drifting waiting to absorb him.
Wow.
It is a queer half hell, a slum belt to Eden, neon lit with its air full of the scent of popcorn and the jukebox on so loud and incessant that a man can't hear himself die."
Wow.
Beautifully written.
Wow.
Now, poverty doesn't, end quote, sorry. So poverty doesn't increase a person's chance of moral depravity any more than access to wealth increases a person's chance to achieve goodness. But I think what Steiner here hits on the head is that people without purpose in life, there is a whole pit of depravity waiting to absorb you and take you along with it. And I love that what he says there, where it's a constant routine of entertainment and animalistic grabbing for pleasure to the point where it's so incessant you won't even hear yourself die long before you've drawn your last breath, you know? So so that I thought was covered well, that idea that without purpose and without some type of strong moral compass, men and women are ready prey for depravity and crime. Now, the weakness of our justice system is the most obvious theme of this book, especially in matters of passion and empathy, because it has to deal with just facts, with the what, not the why, because it ain't even good at dealing with the what. So where it really loses me, the justice system, not this book, is where people are really grasping for straws when it comes to, was this case handled properly? Because whatever you may feel, there is indisputable proof that these men committed the crime. So what really is your aim? Are you trying to just play this game of law, or are you really concerned with some balance here? The justice system, what I'm trying to say, is not prepared to protect people, but it's all that we have right now. So when it tries to deal with if law was handled correctly, we've known of people who DNA evidence shows they were in jail all their life for naught. They did not commit the crime.
They did not commit.
Okay, that happens. But in cases like these, the justice system is less concerned with balance and more concerned with the game of law. And that's disheartening. Also, the fact that, lastly, I'll wrap this up. Lastly, the fact that this idea that, well, these people may have been crazy, that dismissive word, they may have been schizophrenic, irrelevant to me. Yeah, I'm sure they were under demonic influence, point blank, period.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, somebody can be kind in one aspect of their life and evil in the other. These people were truly evil. And in my opinion, I wasn't there. I don't know them. But in my opinion, under a demonic influence. And so all that said, this book is very depressing, well written. And no, I would not recommend it. Alexis, what about you?
Oh, thank you, Kari, for that takedown. We always appreciate a good one. Thank you. So I this book had the back and forth, and I don't like it. And it kept going back into Perry's life and retelling that story. His sister told this story. He wrote his story, and then somebody else, or it was written multiple times, tell another story. So I didn't like that. And no, I don't have to read the book again. I am glad I read it. And it is, of course, a horrible story, account of murder.
So why are you glad that you read it?
Because I watched the movie and I like to make those connections. I always like to make those connections. So I am glad I read it. And I do like Truman Capote's work, as I read.
I'm not a fan.
Breakfast at Tiffany, and I enjoyed that
he
writing as well.
He says things about Black people that they just will not stand. And I feel like it's the author's point of view. He's very dismissive of everyone. But
he
I
is
feel like
everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a fan.
So it's so no, I don't have to read the book again. Because I don't have to read the book again. It really goes into Perry's life, and I don't know, does it attempt to justify, or is it just sharing information about Perry? I don't know.
I think it's fascinated with his traumatic childhood and the fact that he can be both a kind and endearing person and commit this crime.
Thank you. I don't have to read it again. I would not recommend the book. But if you like true crime, of course, then you probably appreciate this book in some way.
All right. Well, thank you, Alexis. What are we reading next week?
I think we're on a break.
You got that right. Memorial Day.
Yeah.
And so we will be gone.
Yeah.
Like most of America, we'll hit the road.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a great time.
Yep.
Just not a podcasting time.
Yeah.
And then we'll see you the following week. And we will have a reading schedule published for our Patreon members and everyone else on litsocietypod.com and patreon.com/litsociety. Stay tuned.
Give us a week.
If you've enjoyed what you just heard, tell a friend about Lit Society. Visit litsocietypod.com for show notes, this month's book list, and to sign up for our amazing email newsletter. To hear all of our episodes in full, please, or all of our future episodes in full, please go to patreon.com/litsocietypod and sign up for Team Literati. It's like $3 and you get your money's worth. All right. And on that note, until next time, readers,
read something.